the importance of inspired leadership, especially during times of disruption, and in our industry, Shaker,
Mhm.
the lack of it in many cases. But Steve, interested in your thoughts around the importance of that.
Yeah, I think inspiration is good. I think it's a good starting point, but I believe momentum, um, beats inspiration and motivation like all day long, right? I think you need to inspire people to a certain point. What happens with inspiration is that we see that teams need to continuously be inspired instead of it being in the context of how do you inspire yourself as a leader within a team? How do I actually take hold of what I need to do?
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Retail Perch. And these are coming thick and fast. And Gary, by the way, you left me alone for the last one. I don't know if you
I
remember.
know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I got to work on the airlines, to either change their schedules or get me a broadcasting suite on the airplane.
There you go. That's what we need. That's what we need. But listen, it was a great conversation. I think it would have been better with you, but you'd have geeked out on it, by the way. So where I was talking to who had led data analytics at Sears, City, eBay, and doing some really fun and interesting things, talking about data silos. So you'd have really
Mm.
gotten
Oh
that
yeah,
topic.
it's
Wow.
one of my
I was like,
favorite topics.
"Oh, where's Gary? Maybe we got to redo this with Gary." Anyway, but I'll tell you what, it's December and it is 16 degrees here, and it's pretty cold. I think this winter is going to be pretty exciting. But I think we have a very I don't want to pun on words, but we have a really worthy candidate on the podcast today.
I was waiting for it.
Yeah, Steve, it's the
Yeah,
first of many. So
That's okay.
that's right. That's right. This is just something we do, Steve. So this is our vanity hour. We get to just talk. And but listen, I think Steve comes with just such a phenomenal background, and we're so excited to have you, Steve. And you'll find out pretty soon. Steve's just got an amazing radio voice, and you're probably going to be transfixed. And we're going to interject very little because I want to continue listening to Steve this whole show. So, but Steve, welcome to the Retail Perch, and tell us a little bit about your background.
Oh, guys, I'm super excited, super excited. I'm glad we finally got this opportunity to connect. So, Steve Worthy, founder of Worthy Retail Global, spent about 27, almost 30 years within the retail space. Left that to actually pursue executive coaching and training for retail leaders and also for teams. We've also started to do startups. So if you are a company that is what we call retail adjacent, so you're in service of the retail world, we help you with your communication, your go-to-market strategy, because what we've seen is a lot of companies that are on the peripheral don't understand a lot of the retail mind. They may have a product that they can help things, but we help bring voice to their products, and also work a little bit with competitor IQ, CIQ. They're a mystery shopping company based out of Toronto. My job is to help them expand their mystery shopping capabilities within banks and also within the retail space, not just in Canada, but all throughout the United States. So, and then we have the campus. We have it's our membership community. So that's where actually all of our training and development takes place within inside of that community. So it's just it's that third space that we call it. It's not home. It's not work. You can come there and let your hair down. Not I can't because I'm bald. Um, but everybody else can come in there and let their hair down and ask any type of questions and get some really great insights from our instructors and also for everybody that's a member there as well.
neat,
Wow.
neat.
That's pretty neat. So, in your 27 years in the retail industry, what are some of the things that you think you picked up and that still shape you today?
Oh gosh, there was one story, one situation in general. The company's not doing too well now, but I had a long stint with Target, and in 2013 we had a data breach, And this will make sense here in a second. And we had a data breach where over 40 million people got their data, stolen.
That's through the refrigerator sensor, right?
Yeah,
Or something like
yeah.
that. Okay.
And the lesson for me was I was actually probably about 3 or 4 years removed out of grad school and still in contact with my cohort. And so we in grad school we went through this crisis management training program, and they taught us all the different things to do within a crisis. And our CEO at the time, Greg Steinhoffel, my gosh, he did one of the best jobs of dealing with this crisis that I've probably ever seen, maybe since the Tylenol. So I'm a little older. I think some people in the audience, the audience may remember the Tylenol crisis, and he did such a phenomenal job of providing clarity for the circumstances, and he also did a great job of defining the reality. And you'll probably hear me say those two things probably throughout the course of this conversation, because those were two things that have stuck with me throughout my retail journey, my coaching journey, startups, all of those things. Is how do you make sure that you're very clear with your communication and where you want to go? But then also, probably the step prior to that is how do you define reality for yourself and for your team? Because if you don't do those two things, you're not going to be able to move forward properly until you do those things.
So I love that insight. It's great because I don't think a lot of people stop to think about that, right? That you need to define reality, not only for yourself but for your teammates, for your entire organization.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, you're
Sorry.
absolutely right. And Steve, I think, leadership is I think that to me there's two things that jump out, right? I think clarity and decisiveness, right? There's some I think when you're part of a team, those are the two things you're looking up to the leader for. What do we need to do, and how are we going to do it and execute on it? Everything else you kind of learn along the way. It feels like.
100%. I heard this saying a while ago. It says that even even when the road isn't clear, you still need to be clear, right? As a leader, like even if you really don't know where you're going, you need to be clear in the fact that, hey, I don't know where we're going right now, and that is okay, because I think what we tend to see is a lot of leaders who they'll make up the journey, right? They'll think about this is where we need to go. It's like, well, it's not defined in the fact of, if you don't know where you are right now, that's okay. Then that's where you work with your team to kind of understand what that looks like for them and for the company, because now we see it all the time, building better products. We see it building better guest experiences, better marketing teams, all these different things. If you actually define or understand where you are and then get everybody around the table and no one has an agenda, the only agenda is for the best ideas to come out, gosh, you're moving everybody in the company in the right direction.
I think that, again, I think that's really important, especially today, right? As things are not only changing fast, but change is accelerating,
Mhm.
and it's difficult, many times impossible, to really know where you're going and where the business is going, where the industry is going. Um, so let me ask you this. In addition to what Shaker you just called out, I'm in Washington this week. I guest
Mm.
lecture at Georgetown University, so I've been talking with a lot of MBA students, but also a good number of industry people while I'm here. And something that keeps bubbling up to the top is, given all the transformation, given the disruption happening in the industry, is the need for inspired leadership.
Mm.
And, I've heard the comments several times this week around the importance of inspired leadership, especially during times of disruption. And in our industry, Shaker, the lack of it in many cases. But Steve, interested in your thoughts around the importance of that.
Yeah, I think inspiration is good. I think it's a good starting point, but I believe momentum, um, beats inspiration and motivation like all day long, right? I think you need to inspire people to a certain point. What happens with inspiration is that we see that teams need to continuously be inspired instead of it being in the context of, how do you inspire yourself as a leader within a team. How do I actually take hold of what I need to do within the confines of this team, within the construct of this team, in order for us to lock arms and move forward? And then when you do that, that's where momentum actually starts to take place, because you're
Hmm.
not constantly having to be inspired every day with a, I was with one company, and every Monday morning they would send an inspirational quote. God bless them. It was good. It was great. But we had so many other problems that we needed to fix. Right. And so my goal was like, how do we, as a team, collectively lock arms, um, sort of connect the tissue and understand where we need to move. And then when you start to create momentum, that's where momentum ego goes away. Um, I call CYA, sort of cover your assets type of cultures sort of go away,
Yeah.
because you are all moving towards something different. So the inspiration is great, but it actually it has to turn into momentum over time.
Okay. No, that's great
That's a good
perspective.
point. I mean, I think that it's, kind of like look at it like rocket launch, right? You need to get off the ground, but you need to hit escape velocity to really keep going. Otherwise, you're gonna fall
Yeah.
back pretty soon,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So, I think it's interesting times because, like Gary said, every day it feels like the world is changing with
Mm,
technology, and there's a lot of uncertainty about, what's going to happen. I think even to the point where I find a lot of retail leaders kind of like deer in headlights, frozen, like
mm,
in action, because they're not sure if whatever they're going to do is the right thing because it's going to change tomorrow, and is the decision direction I'm going. I mean, you're steering a big ship, right? And you change the direction of the ship. It's not easy to point it in a different direction. So, how do you approach that? So somebody who's listening to this and they're leading an organization, whether it's a marketing team, a CMO, or somebody, and they're like, AI is coming at you. What do I have to do? And they all feel this urge that they have to do something, right?
yeah.
And so how do you think about something like that?
That's such a great question around the need that you feel like you have to do something. That is sort of the underlying sort of feeling that I get when I talk to companies and leaders, is that we have to do something. Company X, Y, and Z is over here doing this, and we're doing that. We need to actually do something. Well, the tendency is that you make the wrong decisions because you're making the wrong assumptions around what your business really needs. And you think just because this company's doing this and this company's doing that, then I need to be doing the same thing. We see this all the time, and so you end up making a catastrophic error in investment, whether it's around AI or whether it's around a new product line or whatever it may be, just because your competition's doing it. And what we need to really start to hone in on is, what is the customer saying about our business, even in these moments of uncertainty? Because if we can understand and realize what they think about us, what they truly need from us, then I feel like that's the best direction to go in. Because if we start to, yes, we may have to keep up with competition in certain ways with technology, understandably so. But at the end of the day, the customers are coming to you for a specific reason. What we see is that when companies lose their way, and they lose what they've been identified as sort of their core competency, or the reason and rationale why I come to you each and every day, gosh, that's when you start to lose market share. That's when you start to lose ground. And so I think, even in these moments where things are sort of going awry, how do you make sure that you stay in contact with your customer and with your team? One of the areas I talked to someone about the other day, I said, within the retail space, regardless of everything, there's one thing that needs to happen, is that your customers and your team still need to be seen, right? They still need to be seen, because all the noise that's going on around you is going to make you want to do something because you feel like you need to do something. But if your customers and your team are not being seen in this moment, then you're going to lose everything.
That's a great point. And leads me to something, Gary, you posted about on LinkedIn, which I thought was really interesting, is about this cognition overload that's happening, right?
Mm,
Yeah.
There is just a massive cognition overload. There's so much interesting information, and 95% of it, 99% of it really doesn't relate directly to you. So to be able to separate that wheat from the chaff and figure out what to
Yes.
focus on. Uh,
Yeah.
and there's really no way to escape the cognition overload because, information is coming at you from all over the place.
Right.
And if you're in retail and you are, I've been talking to a couple of executives about, and they're looking at how do I transform my organization, make it data driven and,
Mm.
adopt these technologies. And, I'm going back to what you said. You got to really think about the basics. What actually makes your business work? What are the
Mm.
business drivers and what problem am I solving? And is this technology going to help me? Because they want to use AI for everything,
Yeah.
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
From A to Z, right?
Yeah.
And they think AI is going to solve everything, and some of these things don't need AI to solve. Some of these
Yeah.
things
Yeah.
They
require
don't.
leadership, right?
Well, you talked about the problem, and I love that because that's, we'll probably talk about that down here, but that's one of the first things that, we discuss when we're talking with founders is that, are you solving the right problem? And then we go even further in the context of like every problem has a hierarchy, right? So if, you have problem with, infrastructure, whatever that may be. Within that problem, there are, 5, maybe 6 different layers, and each one of those layers is a very specific problem, right? And then within each one of those layers, you actually have a role associated with that problem. And so if you think about it, if I am at role number 3 and layer number 3, I can probably care less about layer 2 and 4. I'm really thinking about my
Yeah.
issue. How do I get my issue solved? And so you have to take that into consideration when you're thinking about identifying the problem. What is everyone thinking? I did a small stint in business development, and I reported directly to the CEO. And one of the things that helped me throughout my retail career was that he taught me how to ask questions and then be able to communicate the problem at each level within the organization, so that way they all felt seen and heard. Because when we do that, now you start to move things forward. But you have to
Right.
understand. I got so many stories. I'm talking to this one person, and their ideas is that they want to help companies within the retail space, like remove the chaos in their org. And I told him, I said, here's the thing: retail leaders like chaos. They live in chaos. It's part of their DNA, right? You're telling me, and it's part of their role, it's part of their existence. And so you're going to tell me as a retail company or retail leader that you're going to take away my reason for existing? No one's going to tell you that. And this is why I love what I do now, because no one ever is going to tell them this within the retail space. That's why I can say whatever it is I want to say now within my world. But this is the truth. Some people, companies like that chaos. So here it is. You're trying to come in and say, I'm going to relieve that. It's not going to happen. You have to think about a different problem that you need to solve.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, think about it, running a retail outfit is like spinning 100 plates simultaneously because so many things have to happen for that can of soup to move off the shelf,
Yeah. 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 No, it's just constantly putting out different fires, right?
Mm-hmm.
No matter what level of the organization you're in, whether you're, a store manager, you're a district manager, you're the CEO, there's just a constant barrage of
Yes.
brush fires that have to be put out. And I think that while obviously the leaders love that, they thrive in that kind of environment, or they couldn't do what they're doing. At the same time, I think that constant, more tactical focus
Mm-hmm.
can be harmful, right?
Mm-hmm.
In making it challenging to step back to understand maybe a bigger picture, understand, in your words, Steve, maybe a different reality that's out there.
Yeah, no,
Just
100%. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
go ahead. No, no, no. Finish that. Finish the thought.
No, I agree, and I think that's when the leader needs to understand the culture within their space, right? Within their company. We talk a lot about psychological safety, right? That was last year was one of my number one things that as a retail company they need to focus in on, the psychological safety. And so within that psychological safety net, if you will, your team, they're able to work with the chaos, but it's also a safe space for them to be able to share different ideas that actually bring a little bit more structure to that chaos, right? When it's necessary. And the leaders have to actually be able to be okay with throttling up and throttling down within within their leadership to help bring out the best. And we talk about it in the context of friction and how do you actually create tension within your team that's actually really good tension in order for the best to come out. So when we start talking about that chaos, I think that creating that tension in conversations with your team and being able to manage that, you're going to be able to find some of the nuggets once you move things back and actually be able to find some sort of more placid type of understanding and direction that's underlining that's underneath that chaos, but you actually have to mine for it. And so a lot of leaders don't have the ability to sort of mine for it. They're okay with it. So you have to take the time to mine for that placid ideas and current that's actually going to move the company forward.
So, just slightly changing topic. I know one of the things that you do is help institutions understand how to identify competitive gaps.
Yeah.
And so when, and I think in the supermarket industry, in certain markets, there's obviously, lots of competition. In some places, some retailers dominate, but it's something that's all, apart from dealing with the operational chaos of running your own business, you also have to think about who else is nipping at your heels, right?
Mm-hmm.
And constantly defend your territory in some sense. So how do you approach, identifying these competitive gaps? And do you have any examples of where you may have kind of looked at those insights and driven some change?
Yeah, what we've seen with banking and within the retail space is initially what they want to do with us, say from a competitor IQ standpoint, is they want to understand their initial conversation is we want to understand, our customer experience. When we come into a store, we come into a bank, what does that actually look like? And we'll say to them, yes, we can do that for you, but that's only half. That's only 50% of the actual equation. The other 50% is what are your customers doing? What are your competitors doing? Right? Not necessarily apples for apples all the time, but we try to get apples for apples in what we do from what we call a human intelligence standpoint, because I'm old school, Air Force guy. And so, one of the things that I learned in the military was around recon, right? How do you get the recon before you actually act, the human intelligence, the boots on the ground type of perspective, because that's the real time information that a lot of companies are missing. Because when you think about, let's just say a certain KPI, average ticket, within average ticket, there are so many different moving parts that actually culminate into that average ticket. There are different experiences, different signals, different conversations that actually take place that will impact that average ticket. You don't see those things. But when you go and use human intelligence, you go and use mystery shopping, you can actually truly map out how you are doing compared to your competitor, and you can see where the bumps and the warts are, and then you can actually see if you want to implement some of these things. The other side of that for my competitive analysis is that we see a lot of companies immediately want to grab everything that the competitor is doing and they want to put it into their business. We just spoke about that. Well, your culture isn't built for that. Your culture isn't built for that. I worked for Caribou Coffee years ago when I first started in the retail space. And I remember when Starbucks started selling CDs. I don't know if you guys remember that. It was years ago.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, yeah, and they started selling CDs and their music and things like that. And guess what we did? Caribou Coffee, within 6-8 months, we started selling CDs. And I said, what are we doing? What are we doing here? This is not us. Like, we were just mimicking that. And
Yeah.
customer after customer was coming in. Why are you guys selling CDs? Why are you guys selling CDs? This is not your culture. And then they finally listened and we pulled back the program. But it was like a great example of trying to grab something from a competitor that doesn't fit your culture. And so I think that's where the honesty has to come into play. So once again, of your reality, what you can handle, and when you get that insight, what can you actually implement that's going to be successful for you?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
reminds me. I don't know if you've heard of this book by Simon Sinek, Infinite Game.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's like you can't keep running a race looking over your shoulder. You got to look ahead sometimes and figure out what you're good at and implement that, right? So, and you're right.
Yeah.
You'll never be good as somebody else. You just got to be the best you possible and just figure out
Right.
what what are you good at winning and how do you get better at that, right?
You know what it
So
is? It's scary though. That it's scary for companies because they feel like, there's success in more people doing the same thing. Like they feel like,
Yep.
okay, well, everybody's sort of doing this. I'm not a lone wolf. I'm not just doing it on my own. So it's sort of scary for a lot of companies to step out and say, I am just going to be this, right? And I'm just going to take a stance on this. Um, I just went to Chick-fil-A. They just opened a brand new coffee concept. It's called Daybright here in Atlanta, Metro Atlanta. So I went there, visited, and the culture was quintessential Chick-fil-A, right? If you ever been to a Chick-fil-A, like
yeah.
the friendliness, the service, everything, but the brand is still trying to figure out what it's trying to become. Is it going to be a Dunkin' Donuts? Or is it going to be a Starbucks? It's somewhere in between. But they took the bold step of trying to figure it out. They're like, well, you know what? We're going to try this. We're okay with sort of carving out
Yeah.
our own lane. So I think that's where companies are a little fearful of doing that, of being the only ones sometimes.
I mean, like
Well,
one of the
you know,
companies. Yeah, go ahead,
no,
Gary.
I was just going to say, you look at the industry that we play in, right? Grocery retail.
Mm,
You've got a century's worth of following. I think maybe in part driven by it's such a thin profit margin business
mm,
that retailers are afraid to take risks
mm,
or do something different. But it's the industry has a long history of being followers.
mm.
Only until they start reading about somebody doing something else and it's proven out and it's got an ROI, then you see, and then it's like a herd of lemmings, right? Chasing after the same thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
I tell you, one
I
of the
think about with soccer. My daughter used to play soccer, but she was just starting out. Like it was like all the kids would just follow the ball. It's like, I'm
Hey,
sorry.
hey, yes,
I'm sorry.
yeah,
Just that
yeah,
analogy just came to me. It's like it's
yeah,
like
yeah,
this whole side of the pitch is empty, but because all the kids are over here following the ball.
yeah.
yeah.
No, that's
Like a
I'm
perfect.
flock
sorry. Go
of
ahead.
birds, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, like one of the companies that really stands out for me from that perspective is something like a Trader Joe's, right? Like they
Yeah.
figured out
Yes.
what they're
Great.
good at,
Great example.
and they just built a phenomenal following. And it's a to me, it's a conundrum because they don't have what you would think a rewards program or loyalty, but they've truly built loyalty in the sense that their customers are willing to pay the price to go shop at a Trader Joe's. Like people will drive 20 miles. You don't find any other grocery store where people will drive 20 miles to get to a grocery store,
right.
right?
Exactly.
And there is something to be said for uh, building an emotional connection with your shoppers, right?
Oh,
In that way.
100%.
And I know we talk about data a lot in this podcast, and Gary and I are big believers in what data can do.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, if data doesn't emotionally help you connect with shoppers, it's pointless,
Right.
right?
Yes. Yes.
And I think I mean I always look at them and say, what are they doing right? And it just jumps out at me as somebody who's such a anomaly in the
Hmm.
supermarket industry, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
One of the interesting things when I, first, came on board and started working with and helping competitor IQ was that they showed me the data. Like it was, initially they were just doing banks, and so my job was, of course, to build up the retail side of things. But I would look at the data they would, provide, and then over here was just these comment blocks, and I started reading the comment blocks, and I was like, oh my gosh. And like, what are we doing with this? Like, oh, they just want the data. They just want the data. I was like, oh no, 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 no. This right here, this is the richness of every shop that we've actually, done. This information here is where change takes place, is where we truly identify the gaps. It's not just the interest rate up and down or whatever it may be. It's about um, that experience that the person had when they walked into that branch. And so
Yeah.
the same thing, and I said this for us here in the States, I said, we love that emotional connection. The data is great. We love the data, but from a retail space standpoint, it is the emotional connection. It's how are we connecting with that store? And so that's where we had to change gears around not just providing the data, but providing the insights behind the data that actually made us a little bit more, I guess, not a nuance within the industry, but to actually sort of be on par with everybody else because other companies were utilizing those comment blocks to provide a more clearer picture.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
like I can't think of another grocery store that's bold enough to open next to a Costco, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And actually, in my area, there's a Trader Joe's right next to a Costco,
yeah.
which tells you something about how confident they are about their
Yes.
appeal, right, to the
Yeah.
marketplace. But
Yeah.
Yeah, I love Costco. I love Costco. And there's a Walmart that's right across the street from the Costco that I go to. I'm telling you what, that Costco is it's always
well,
busy. It's I don't it doesn't even matter. It's always
yeah,
busy.
and you know when a retailer knows understands their customer and knows that they're delivering value on. I
Yes.
know my customers coming to me, and I want to make sure I keep strengthening that reason for coming back to
Right.
me.
Right. That
Yeah.
that core proposition.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
core
and it's
proposition.
almost a confidence, right? So I would tell people this all the time. I could easily tell how a store visit was going to go as soon as I walked in the door. As soon as I walked in the door, just because I sensed either fear or I sensed success within the culture within the team. As soon as I walked in the door of one of my stores, I knew how it was going to go, and I thank God I still have that sense when, when I walk into a Costco, I get that confidence of like, yes, we are here. Like, doesn't matter who's around us. We're not even looking at them.
Right.
Focused inward. Every time I walk into a Costco, I get, doesn't matter where I go, what country or
Yeah,
what country or city, it's the same thing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I agree. And I've never walked out of Costco with one thing.
I know.
I think that's impossible.
Could you imagine walking through a Costco with one of the little plastics, baskets? It's just not gonna work. It is not gonna work.
You
It
know,
is
I
not gonna
made,
work.
one of the rare times I made a reel with my wife. She agreed to be on. So she went in. She said, I need peanut butter and I need granola. And can you go pick it up at Costco? And I went in, and I came back with $300 worth of stuff.
Yeah. It
But
just
that's that. But listen, this is Gary. This has been a fantastic conversation. I feel
Yeah.
like we can keep going on and on and on. We've got lots of people as Steve that we just have a fantastic time talking to. I'd love to get you back on because I think this is when you think about, I think leadership, right, is
mm,
such a. I know it's got nothing specifically to do with supermarket retail, but it seems like retail needs just because like you said, it lives in a world of chaos, and when you have
yeah.
chaos you need somebody who can think straight, clear, and it's
Yeah.
such a bigger requirement because nobody gives you a map on how to do stuff. When you got a map,
Right.
you don't need somebody to tell you the way, right?
Right.
it's
Right.
it's when things are foggy and it's stormy, and that's when you need people to really point the way and lead the way. And it seems
Yeah.
like leadership is such a. I'd love to just do another episode just talking about leadership here.
Yeah. I agree. There's a lot more here to explore
Uh,
because, not only do you have an industry that chaos is just
hmm
fundamentally a part of it, but you've now sort of ignited the fire of disruption, right? That's being
Mm.
triggered by all this tech innovation that's just adding to it. So I think the need for solid leadership is now more than ever. So,
Mm.
no, I think there's a lot here to explore.
yeah, but this has been an absolute pleasure here, Steve, to have you on the podcast. And again, I think you've got such an incredibly soothing, podcast friendly voice.
I
That's
did
been an
radio
absolute.
in college, and a buddy of mine, um, we were in class, and he said, you should do radio, go, be on the camera. I went to SUNY Plattsburgh, way upstate New York, and for undergrad. And I went in there and started talking to the guy. He immediately like put me on the mic, and I loved business and sports at that time, like those two. And we just created like a quick small show, for the college radio station, and then that sort of started my love for this medium. And I've been podcasting since 2007. So
Wow.
yeah, so
Before
I
podcast
love
was
the
a thing.
medium. I
Right.
love the medium, man.
Yeah,
That's
that's
amazing.
great. That's great.
Yeah, but it's been fantastic having you on, and this should be out in a couple of weeks. So I can't wait to listen to the entire episode again because I'm
Amen.
sure there's so many nuggets that just dropped that I was so busy thinking about what to
Yeah,
say
yeah, no,
next.
I know. There's a lot here
I
to
gotta
process.
go back and listen to it again and make sure I catch everything that you said. But appreciate it. I want to give a big shout out to the team. They've been doing a great job, Gary, of putting these episodes out right on time, all
It's
polished. And now
awesome.
we're getting
Yes.
little previews a week before. Do you see that?
Yes. Yeah, I know it. No, they're doing a terrific job.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you to Courtney and Mika
Yeah.
and the entire Retail Perch team. Appreciate it. And thanks, Steve. Thanks for
No,
being on the show.
thank you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.